Hello and welcome to More Than the Song, an opportunity to discuss the voice and sung worship in the Salvation Army. Music Editorial are conducting a series of interviews with vocal leaders and champions of the voice with the aim to receive inspiration, to receive sound teaching, but hopefully to re-energize those of you who have a love for singing. Today I'm joined by Susan Turner. I imagine many people watching this will already be very familiar with Susan's work over the years. She has extensive experience as a musician and soloist, traveling the world and visiting countries such as Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the Netherlands, the United States, Sweden, South Africa, amongst others, as well as making many recordings. Susan has been a member of the International Staff Songsters and served as the deputy leader in the 1980s and early 1990s. Susan was on staff at the UK's Territorial Music School for 19 years in the vocal faculty and has been a guest at the Western Music Institute in the USA, Western Territory. That's a bit of a mouthful. Susan also has significant experience as a Corps Songster Leader, leading groups in Kingston upon Thames, Staines and Stowmarket. After 13 years as Songster Leader at Stowmarket, Susan and her husband Gerald moved down to the south coast and now soldier at Boscombe Corps. So thank you so much for joining me today, Susan. It's great to have you on here and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for asking me.
We'll start with the first question that I've been asking each of the guests so far is this. So we recognize that beyond this deep theology within singing are the years of practice and dedication that makes a performance more than a song. What makes a vocal offering more than a song to you?
My immediate thought was, why do we sing, rather than going straight to more than a song? And singing is a natural release of emotion. So we can be happy, we can be sad. And singing covers the complete emotions that we have. For many of us who are soloists or choral leaders, we realise there's more to singing than just a release of emotions. I was listening, funnily enough, on Friday to Desert Island Discs, and they were asking listeners to tune in, listeners who are connected to the coronavirus epidemic. And it was very interesting to hear the songs that they've chosen. I believe the reasons for their choice of song is the answer to your question, more than a song. One nurse was asked to take her guitar into a staff meeting, and she took her guitar into the staff meeting and started to play Amazing Grace. And all the nurses in that staff meeting started to sing along with her. Nurses that had been with patients who were dying, nurses that were coping with that situation, there they were singing Amazing Grace. And then they went into the most fantastic harmonies. I don't know whether they were taught these harmonies, I don't think they were, but it was beautiful to listen to. And the thing about it was that this singing of Amazing Grace brought them cheer. It was wonderful. They were happy. So there's one emotion that came over. Another listener was the mother of a young doctor who was in a London hospital. And the mother couldn't go in to see her daughter, obviously. So she stood outside the hospital. And she sang loudly outside the hospital for her daughter to hear. And it's just amazing what these sort of things can do. She wasn't a trained singer, but she brought comfort to everyone in that hospital who heard her. So first of all, we have the lady who brought cheer, and then the lady who brought comfort. And my third point would be this week at the memorial of George Floyd, when the soloist sang again Amazing Grace, and what a song that is, the power that that has in it. And everybody was singing along. And that actually was a healing process. It brought healing to those people. So this sums up how I understand why we sing. And it makes the vocal offering more than a song. It's actually a ministry.
Yeah, completely. Thank you for that. So I'd like to talk about your early years as a singer. When did you start to realise that singing was going to be such a huge part of your life?
My early years, well, I started singing when I was 5. I was one of three girls, and my father was very, very keen on singing. He was the Deputy Songster Leader at Kingston. And he used to get the 3 of us to sing together. And I remember one of the first times we sang in harmony, we were sitting in the back of the car, probably some old black Austin 7 or something, driving somewhere, and he made us sing Away in a Manger with me singing the lead part. Then he taught my sisters to sing different parts to go with it, and we had 3-part harmony, sitting in the back seat of the car on the way on this journey. And there we started, and we eventually moved on and grew up singing three of us all together, singing trios, and we were called the Stevens Sisters, very much like the Beverley Sisters, Carl, but you're too young to know who they are.
I think I am.
That's such a shame. So sang trios, and we travelled all over the south of England. Now, probably the furthest part we went as far as the army was concerned was to go up to Leicester. Now, that was like going to the north of Scotland to us in those days. You know, it was amazing. And we sang in the Leicester de Montfort halls, the 3 of us. And for years, we were Stevens Sisters singing all over the place. And so I was always singing with my sisters. Then my eldest sister decided to get married and move. So obviously 2 of us were left until the middle sister then went to uni, and I was on my own. I didn't know what my life was going to do. I had no idea, but I loved the Salvation Army. And I wanted to be part of the Salvation Army. I even became a prospective candidate. And that was something that I knew God wanted me to do something. But it led me to be doing more as far as singing was concerned, because soon after that, I had a letter arrive saying, Susan, would you come for an audition to join the National Songsters? Now, again, you probably don't know who they are either.
I do.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
It was just a group of young women who were in the London area. And so I went along to the audition under Muriel Packham, Marjorie Ringham at the piano. I was scared stiff, a little bit like I probably am now, because I don't do this very well. And I got into the National Songsters, and I was there under Muriel's leadership. And so my singing career moved on from there. As far as singing solo work, I think it probably did start about then, but it was great. God had given me a gift that I could then use, and I think that calling that I had was actually to use my singing voice rather than anything else.
Yeah. So you've touched upon, or you've mentioned a couple of people in your life that influenced you. So your dad and Muriel. So are you able to kind of unpack that a bit and kind of discuss the impact that any mentors or teachers had on your life at that point in your singing?
Yeah, well, I never had any vocal training at all as a young person, or even as a teenager. In fact, I've really not had much vocal training at all, although I do have a degree, but that was my own choice later on in life, which I could talk about in a minute, I suppose. But yes, my dad was the first mentor, and Muriel Packham, some of you will know her as Muriel Yendall. She was a very, very scary lady, but she was a great mentor. She was a great teacher. She knew her stuff, but she wasn't a singer by any means, but she knew how to lead a choral group. She had the most fantastic choral group, International Songsters. And she was an encourager, but as I say, she was very scary. In fact, I have to say that when I became Songster Leader at Staines, I'm talking now about lots of years ahead of that, Muriel retired and came to live in the area, and she used to come to the Staines Corps. And I remember that one of the things that I've always said is important as a Songster Leader is to get the right music for the occasion. And the Sunday morning meeting is such an occasion that you need the right music that actually enhances the worship that we're trying to do. And I try really hard to get the right song for Sunday mornings and Sunday evenings in those days. But sitting in the congregation was this lady, Muriel Yendel. And even then, when I was in my 40s, did I worry about Muriel being there to hear me and to see me and to see if everything was okay. So much so, Carl, that when the songsters had finished singing, I sat down in my seat, which was nearly opposite Muriel. She would look at me and I'd either get a big smile on her face with a thumbs up, or she would do this. And I thought, oh dear, you obviously didn't think that was very good or not appropriate. So even then, I was a little bit scared of Muriel. But after Muriel, a lady called Maureen Davey took on the songsters. She was much younger. She happened to be my music teacher at school as well. So she was a help. Being younger as well was helpful. And I learnt quite a bit from both of those ladies. And then as you move on, you learn from the leadership that you're under. Obviously, Norman was a great leader, but he didn't give any vocal tuition at all, really. But Len Ballantyne certainly did. And I loved his method of teaching. And of course, Len would always do warm-ups, even with the ISS. In fact, even with his own choir brigade on the Sunday morning when I was visiting Canada one year, I was invited into the songster room to be part of the prayers before we went in. And Len would do a warm-up in the songster room before they actually sang on a Sunday morning, even rubbing shoulders with each other as they were sort of trying to release tension. And great, I love Len's way of doing that. So really, there's not many more people who I would say have helped me singing, apart from listening to people. It's so important to listen. One lady in the National Songsters, her name was Mary Edge. She became Mary Miller. She had the most wonderful voice that I think I would ever have wanted to be like. Although she was a soprano and I was always classed as an alto, she had fantastic sound and I loved it. She unfortunately died at a very young age, so many people won't have heard her, but beautiful. So I used to listen to her, and I love listening still to Janet Baker, and I hear some of her recordings. You've got to listen. Yeah. You learn from listening and those sort of things. Good. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. Thank you. It does, again, it's led on to our next question quite nicely, I think, because you've talked about kind of the national songsters and the influence Muriel Yendel had and Norman and kind of seeing how singing has evolved. How have you seen singing develop in the Salvation Army over the years?
I have to be truthful and say that I do worry about the singing in the Salvation Army. I worry a lot. The thing is, we start off in the singing company, obviously, as young voices, we try to encourage young people to sing. Then we hope that they will move into the senior sections. But that doesn't always happen nowadays. You know, in the early years when I was young, singing was just so important. And well, I remember the occasions of the Songster Leaders Council's festivals in the Royal Albert Hall, when we had 1,000 voices behind the staging, absolutely full of songster brigades from this country, from UK, singing mass songs. It was wonderful, right up until 1990s, I would say. Absolutely fantastic. And it encouraged people to sing, to invite people down from the north to come down and sing in the Albert Hall, you know, Songster Brigade. They loved it. They were so excited. And to have the leadership that we had in those days, standing in front of them, leading them, they loved all that. It was so important. But the Salvation Army has changed. And it doesn't happen anymore because we've moved on. And of course, we've moved on and we've had other forms of worship within our music and creative arts programs. But I do believe that songster groups are diminishing. Wherever you go, it worried me when I was in the ISS recently, whenever we travelled to a corps that maybe I'd been to in the previous time I was in the ISS, where it was a big corps and a big songster brigade, we no longer have that. It's totally different. But that's the bit that worries me, because that means that choral singing might die. I don't believe we should lose choral singing in the Salvation Army. I have nothing against the other type of singing, if that's what people want to do. Obviously, choral and contemporary, you can still sing both within a group, as I think you do with your group. And it's important that we do try and stick to the choral tradition. This is the UK. It's a choral tradition in the UK that we mustn't lose. So that's what worries me. I mean, we obviously try and encourage young people to go to music schools, where I hope they will pick up some of the things that we're talking about, learn how to sing and how to teach and how to move on. I think youth choruses may be a good thing, and fellowship choruses and worship groups, all part of the Salvation Army, but we don't want to lose the choral sound as well. And I don't know how we can get over it. To be quite honest, I don't know. The International Staff Songsters were formed hoping that it would encourage other brigades to build up to that, but I'm worried. And if that's an answer to your question, I don't know how to say anything else, really.
No, I think we'll talk about that a bit later on, and kind of your experiences and maybe putting those into practice and kind of using maybe your experiences to help us understand what might help in the future. But before we do that, I think and actually it does stem from this, in that I think a really important aspect of singing is to kind of pass the baton on, to mentor people, and to go alongside young singers and work with them and teach them, and almost kind of pass that bug for singing on. So I'll ask you, what 3 tips would you pass on to a young singer? If a young singer came to you right now and asked for 3 things, what would you say?
I've got 3 things written down on my piece of paper. I said, that's easy. Singing is an art, so be an artist and paint a picture. Because we can all paint pictures. People can see things through music. And singing is fun, so enjoy it and get people to enjoy it. And lastly, never stop learning. Always ask questions and listen to other people. 3 things.
Yeah, short and sweet. I like that. Thank you. And so, as a vocal leader, so you have, as I mentioned earlier, so much experience leading choirs, and there are so many people I've met that have a story from a rehearsal that you've led, or have been impacted by your leadership in a choir. Good stories. What were your first opportunities as a vocal leader?
Well, would be with the singing company. Obviously, that's where I started at the age of 18. I then became a deputy songster leader at the age of 18 as well. I think I was both at the same time. Being a deputy songster leader is always a difficult job because you're not the leader. And I often say to people who have taken on a deputy job that you can't really do your own thing in a way because it may not be the same way that the leader wants to do it. You see, the thing is, all singing teachers, all choral instructors, they all teach differently. And not one or the other is correct or wrong, I don't think. It's whether they get the result at the end of the day is the important thing. So being a deputy is not always the easy thing to do. I also say that being a deputy doesn't mean to say you're going to make the leader, because that doesn't always work either. But I was a songster leader at the age of 20, and that's quite young. And I hadn't had any vocal training at all. But for some reason, because my father was a deputy songster leader, my grandfather had been a songster leader, for some reason I knew how to conduct.
Okay.
It was a natural thing for me to do. And so that's where I started with this conducting, and probably done it the rest of my life, to be quite honest, because obviously I've been teaching as well. So I can't remember what your question was now, Carl.
Your first opportunities as a...
Were they? Okay, well, yeah. They were my first opportunities. Yeah, that was it.
That's interesting. And you led the vocal options at the Territorial Music School for 19 years, is that correct?
Well, the first 2 years, I think I was the sergeant major in charge of the girls, hoping that they would behave themselves.
Yeah.
They didn't go anywhere near the boys' rooms and things like that. And they probably hated me. And in fact, let's think about it. Your mother-in-law, yes, and her sister were both in Cobham Hall when I was the sergeant major, probably. But Norman Bearcroft, bless his heart, he knew me through my singing with the National Songsters and with my singing with my two sisters. He knew the family. He knew I could sing, and he asked me to do some work within the group, the girls, while I was still the sergeant major. And so I had a little go then, and it was then that he realised, I think we need this one on the staff of the music team. And so after that, I then was on the staff the whole time.
Yeah. No, and it was just a couple of weeks ago, Sueblythe was on here, and she was saying how influenced she was by your leadership in the girls chorus at TMS for those years.
It was amazing. And the thing about it, Carl, is that you don't realise you are that influence at the time, because all you're trying to do is to get the best out of them. And I always think you've got to try and get the best. Yeah. So you've got to work at the things that make it good. You've got to work at the vocal techniques, the vowels, sounds, the position of the vowels, the placement of the, all that has to come within that sort of teaching, which I did. I have to say, I've always studied singing, even though I've not been taught, but I've read so many books on singing and tried the experiments that they offer and the ideas that they offer.
Yeah.
So I did know a little bit about what I was talking about, but yeah. So we tried to do that at music school, and now when I see other leaders in the Salvation Army, and it does happen, I'm saying that it does actually happen, that we do get leaders who have come from being students at the music school. I think of Leslie Nicholson. Mm-hmm. She was at my music school for years and years under my leadership. And of course, I'm not sure Sueblythe was, but Sueblythe was a little girl when I was the leader down there in Cobham. And I remember her mother used to play the piano for me. Yeah. And she used to come in and used to say, I really want to be Susan Turner. That's what she wanted. Yeah. Now, probably doesn't remember saying that, but that's what she wanted. Bless her heart. But there are many, many leaders around now who came to music school who are now moving on into leadership, which is great. And that's one way that the army can introduce this singing style and leadership.
Yeah, and I think you did touch upon something I'm beginning to learn is quite important, in that you read and you studied. You tried to learn from books, and I think that is so important, because I'm learning at the moment. There are new studies out all the time. There are new books out all the time, and singing is such it's evolving, and people are understanding the voice more and more all the time. And I mean, you read a book from 15, 20 years ago, and actually some of it will be dated now, and the advice or the understanding of the way the voice works will be dated. So it's important that I think leaders and singers, if you're interested in it, just to keep up to date with it, and just kind of go on the internet and just look for studies and kind of understanding all of that.
Yeah, I mean, the internet is fantastic to do that. You can just go on it and it's right there. Put a question in and it's there for you. But always look at more than one.
Yeah.
It's like having an illness. So you look it up and you find you're going to die in 10 days' time or something. But always make sure that you can look at more than one, because it's not always going to suit you, basically.
That's important. So I'm going to skip a question into your leadership of a choir. So, because we've been talking about your opportunities as a vocal leader, and you touched upon your rehearsal technique and how you lead a choir. So when you do go to a rehearsal to conduct and to lead that, what are your main objectives of the rehearsal, and how do you achieve those objectives?
I suppose the main objective, I mean, why are we there to start with? Well, we want to sing well, don't we? But the main objective, and I have to think of not only Salvation Army choirs, but also my youth choir that I had in Ipswich. I had a fantastic group in Ipswich from in the music service. You go in and you've got to get them to enjoy what they're doing. Because if you don't get people to enjoy what they're doing, they're not going to do it. And that's the simple thing about it. You want them to be sitting on the edge of your seat, edge of their seat, ready to go and wanting to do it. So first of all, they've got to enjoy what they're doing. If you're going to do warm-ups, which you should do, I have to add there, because I totally agree with warm-ups in a rehearsal. It's just like no different than somebody who's going out to run. They've got to warm their muscles up. All sport needs to warm up the muscles. So we do when we're singing. Even in the songster situation, we must do the warm-ups. So make the warm-ups fun so that they don't sit there and are bored. And you can do that by looking online, because there's loads of them. And really get them to enjoy what they're doing. The other thing is that in a Salvation Army setting, we are there for a reason. And we've got to remember that what we're doing is to God's glory, and we try really, really hard to make sure that what we're doing is what God wants us to do, to move on in that way. If only I could find the right piece of paper, I might have some more ideas written down here, but I'm in such a muddle.
Okay.
I think we've gone out of sequence here, but not to worry. It's got to be great. The other thing is, being part of a songster brigade is like being in a family. It's a family. We love each other, hopefully. Doesn't always happen, of course, because if somebody sits in your seat, they're not going to be very happy about that, are they? And you get all these silly little niggles. So you've got all that to sort out as a leader as well. But yeah, we've got to live as a family. We've got to love each other. But we've also got to sing to the best of our ability. And I believe that we must give vocal instruction. And then we can give the message to the listener. And also they will take in the message themselves. We're not just there to give, but we're there to be part of the giving so that we can receive as well. And some of the music that we do sing, wow, it's hard to sing sometimes because you've received so much. Then you can't put everything into perspective. So the army has that great power to do that. Of course, when you're, I mean, I don't know whether you want me to talk about my outside choir. Yeah, this was at the music service when I worked in Ipswich. I had the opportunity to lead the county choir sort of thing, the children's choir. And I started because somebody had made a bit of a problem for the music service, and they'd lost all the children and taken them away and made another choir with them. So I had to start with 6 little children, and trying to keep the attention of 6 children was quite hard. But it gradually grew, and in the end I had a fantastic group of 36 teenagers who were absolutely sitting on the edge of their seats every week. They loved it. They loved being together, but they loved the music that I chose, and we sang some army songs, which they also loved, I have to say. But I remember them singing One Day More when they were just amazing, you know. But we also sang things from Carl Jenkins of Huck, I think was The Armed Man. And some of that is quite difficult, but they sang it real. And the big occasion I had with them was in Snape Maltings when they sang there. But it just goes to prove that you have to keep them happy, make sure they're enjoying what they're doing, give them the right vocal teaching and the technique that they can cope with, and give them the right music to sing. And wow, unbelievable. There we go.
Yeah, and it's good to...
Sorry, Carl. Funnily enough, some of them still get in touch with me about Cantal. That was 10 years ago when I was there. Sorry.
No, that's great. I think it's really valuable to, if you have experience outside of the Salvation Army, it's really valuable, I think, to bring that in and use that as well, and when leading and singing in the Salvation Army, because I think we have so much to learn from other groups. So we'll go on to the penultimate question. So we'll talk within the Salvation Army context again. What training opportunities do you think are necessary to develop both young singers and young vocal leaders? There can be the same or different opportunities, however you feel.
Well, the first thing to remember is that very young children, again, need to enjoy what they're doing. And you start off singing nursery rhymes and perhaps rounds and clapping rhythms and things like that. I've never been terribly keen on teaching very young children, but when I was teaching, I only started in I think year 7 was the youngest that I would teach. But in the army, we obviously give young singers every opportunity to sing. First of all, how many of us have watched the primary get up on a Sunday, special Sunday, when they get up there and sing their hearts out on a special occasion? They all sing together, or they all sing differently. They could sing in the same key, but they may not sing in the same key. But everybody loves it. They love that opportunity. All the kids love the opportunity to sing together. And then as they grow up, they may go into the singing company and more opportunities to use their voice and develop their vocal skills. And then we offer them the opportunity, as I've spoken to before, about music schools and youth choirs and so on. One thing we lack, as far as I'm concerned, is the opportunity to teach vocal leaders within the Salvation Army. Every vocal leader should have some knowledge of vocal production. You can't just stand up and take a choral group without knowing something about the workings. You don't have to know all the names of all the things, it doesn't matter, but you need to know the basic techniques of breathing, of producing, of projecting, and of the sort of things that we all know we should know, but it's not always evident. it's not evident because there's not the opportunity that there should be for them to learn these skills. I know there are leadership options at music school, but I'm not sure that they are vocal leadership options. I think they cover the leadership of the fact of being a leader. I've always been concerned that there's not enough training for vocal leadership. I've made it known to people that I don't think there's as I would within our movement, so much so that I did offer my services at one time, but that's another story. I can't go into that. So the question is, you know, what opportunities are there for training leadership in the army? I wish there was. I wish there was.
And I think that's something that has come from each conversation in that, and it's reflected in other territories as well. It's not just, you know, it's not unique to us. We see it particularly in kind of the Western territories, where we have this this choral tradition, where actually we've got to a point where, yeah, opportunities to train young leaders is far and few between. And that is particularly something that has come up, and I think that is something that, as we look forward, you know, to the future of choral singing, that is something that is really vital to happen, the success of that.
I hope it does.
We'll finish up now with highlights. Any highlights? I'm sure you have many, and we probably could be here for hours.
I think that's the problem. Many is the problem. So many. I suppose I could say that the highlights of where I've sung and the types of halls I've sung in, so many countries, as you'd mentioned right at the beginning. But I've been able to sing in amazing halls. I mean, to sing solo in the Royal Albert Hall. And it wasn't until only a few days ago when somebody put something on Facebook about a Royal Albert Hall program, and I saw my name was on it in 1970, I think it was 1971 or something like that, and where I sang solo for the first time in the Albert Hall. I know I'd only recently been married, so I wasn't very old, 23 or something, and yeah, I sang there. Where else did I say that I was interested in? Let's have a look. Oh, when I went to Canada to sing in the Roy Thompson Hall. Amazing. Fantastic hall. Acoustically far better than the Albert Hall. So it was wonderful to sing in, and in there. And then in the Concertgebouw in Holland, to sing there as well. Have you done that one? I think you might have done.
No, I've not been to.
Oh, that's lovely as well. And then I sang in the big, I don't know if the Army still have it now, but in the hall at New York. They've all been great times, great times. But I wouldn't say they were the highlight of my singing career, because I have to think, what do I mean by a highlight? I mean, standing waiting to sing is our highlight, or is that absolutely scary? Because, you know, people don't think I suffer from nerves, but I jolly well do. And it's terrible waiting to go on to sing. And until you're up there singing, full of confidence, then I'm fine. But wow. So not sure that singing in those big halls was the highlight of my singing career. And I hope it's not yet over too, because I still do a bit of singing. But I will have to add this, my special highlight, my special memory is my trip to South Africa. And I was given this opportunity to go to South Africa as a soloist, to travel from, to go to Cape Town, to go to Johannesburg and Pretoria, and to be able to lead singing companies, to be able to lead songsters, and to actually sing solos as well, all in the same sort of programs and things. It was great. But the highlight was a Sunday morning. And it was one Sunday morning when I was told it would be a little different. So we were going to go to Crossroads, which was the Cape Town township. And we went in a mobile pulpit van. So it's like a white van where the back pulled down and the pulpit appeared in the back. We went into this township. Now, have you been to any townships in Africa? Because, well, poverty is not the word. They're beyond poverty. We went down there and we opened this pulpit up, and in front of us was a crowd, absolute crowd of these lovely people who were stricken with, well, all sorts of things. And they were just totally aware of the fact that we were there to minister to them. To stand up and have to sing, Carl, in front of these people, to sing a solo. And there was one person standing there with his pig under her arm. And I thought, well, why has she got a pig there? But, you know, they were hoping perhaps to sell it and eat it, but it was terrible. But I had to stand there and sing. And although it sounds terrifying and but it's very emotional, it was a highlight to be able to, God give me that chance to do that. And then another Sunday during that period that we were in South Africa, I say we, because Gerald always comes with me, we went to a farm belonging to the Salvation Army out in the country. And in this farm, and Gerald, having been a farmer, loved the idea of going to a farm. We looked around the pigsties and places, but we went into the main hall, and it was in this farm that it was given over to the Salvation Army as a rehabilitation centre. So there were drug addicts, there were alcoholics, mostly men, and went into this hall, and it was full of these men sitting there waiting for the meeting to start. Again, I got this feeling that I've got to sing to these men. What on earth do you sing? You know, but I'd already chosen the song. You probably know it. Lots of people will. He's got all the time in the world, and he knows what temptation can do. So don't worry that he will give up on you. He's got all the time in the world. I don't know how I got through it, because I could see by their faces that it was getting through to them.
Yeah.
You know, God's given me a wonderful chance to minister to people. Now I'm getting all emotional now, so it's your turn. That's my highlight.
No, thank you so much for that. I mean, we could be sat here for hours, I think, to talk about all these things and kind of to share our thoughts. But yeah, thank you for joining me this week. It's been really good to hear from you and to hear your perspective on things. It's really valuable, and I'm sure many people will be really interested to hear about kind of your earlier days as a singer and how you grew as a singer and a Christian and Salvationist throughout that time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.